Hello everyone, I'm Windybeard and this is a tutorial video for how to make a level editor in Clickteam Fusion 2.5. This video is going to take you through the steps that I use to make level editors for the games that I've made over the years. And I will explain everything I'm doing as best as I can to make it as clear as I can so that you can either follow along or learn a few tricks and tips. So going to cover quite a few things in this tutorial, and fairly quickly I will stop at the points that I think really need explaining, but other than that I will assume that most people who are watching this video understand how Fusion works in order to move around the screen, so I won't go into that level of depth, but I will try and explain the stuff that I'm doing as best as I can. Right, so here's my level editor. As you can see, I've started already, but I haven't actually done anything yet. There is no code whatsoever or no programming, nothing, empty. So we have this screen here, which is our two layers we have. We have a background and a top layer that I've created. And all that's on the background layer is this object here. And this is an active object of which I've called UI background. And that's an active object for a reason, which I'll explain later. I've also created a cursor object, which is just a red square, simple as that, transparent in the middle. And we have an array there waiting for us, which I have named level data. That is it. I haven't done anything else. So to get going from here, we need to first of all lock this cursor to a grid. So we need to grid this out and lock this to that grid. I'm using, the cursor is 16 by 16 pixels, 16 by 16. So this is going to be a 16 by 16 tiled level editor. Okay, so to do that, we will chuck in, and this is just what I always do anyway. I always put a starter frame object line there, just always have it there, just at the top, and then we will go and then have an always here. So this command will be always running. And what we want to do, okay, with our cursor, is we want to set its X coordinate, and this is how we're going to lock it to the grid. Set X coordinate, we're going to set it to the X of the mouse, so that means it will stick to the mouse. And we'll also set its position to the Y of the mouse. There we go. So what that will do is now when we run it, we will now have our cursor attached to the mouse, as you can see. There we go, which isn't much good to us really. We've got it locked, but we want it locked on a grid. So simply do the following. So we have the mouse, all right, but what we're going to do here, we're going to bracket it off for now, just to keep this all in check. And then we're going to, because we have a 16 by 16 grid, so we're going to divide it by 16, and then we're going to times it by 16. All right, bang. We'll do the same for the Y. Exactly the same thing. Have a little bit of that. And then we'll run that. There we go, snap to the grid. See that? Now it's moving around in 16 by 16 pixels, as you can see. Beautiful, beautiful. That is progress, nice and quick. Right, so what we need to do now that we have that going on is we need to get some grid references going. Okay, so what we're going to do is quickly create on our top layer two counters. So we'll have one counter, bang. There we go. We're going to stick that there. All right, and we're going to call this X lock. All right, so that's our X location on the grid. We're going to clone that. We're going to have another one, and we're going to call this Y lock. Okay, so, and we're going to use these to get our exact location on that grid above. Let's just move those around a bit. There we go. Okay, let's go back in. So, in order to get that, we want to go to our X lock. Here it is. So we're going to always, and this is again in the always, same as setting to the grid. We're going to set this counter to, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab the position of this cursor, so it's X location, all right, and then we're going to divide that by 16. Okay, and then, so there we go. We'll just do that. So that should give us our X location now on the grid. So we're minus because we're off the screen. So there you go. So it knows where we are on the grid, on the X axis. Problem is, it starts with a 0. We don't want that. We do not want that. So what we're going to do is quickly chuck in a +1. Boom. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so on and so on. So it goes all the way over to 40. Okay, so our maximum is x40. There we go. We want to do the same for the y. Set position. No, we're going to set that set counter to position y coordinate divided by 16. Again, bracket it all off. +1. Have some of that. Same again, see? Exactly the same. Now we have our grid reference. Beautiful. So we have 23 down, 40 across. That's the size of our screen. There we go. And you can make this any size you want, any tile size you want. Obviously, you just, where we've got 16 in there, because we're doing it by 16 pixels, you do 32 pixels, do 20 pixels, do whatever the hell you want. But just make sure that those numbers where it says 16 are changed to the size of whatever tiles you're using. So now that we have that, we're going to create another counter, clone this object again, and we're going to call this one, we'll call it location ID, right? And what this is going to give us is a single number that runs from 0 to whatever this number is down here and everything in between. So how we do that is we want to always set this counter, and we want to set this to this number, which we know is our x, which is our x-axis, so whatever number that is. And then we want to plus to that number the total number of x squares, so however far across we can go. So we know that's 40. All right, so the furthest we can go is 40 in a row. Okay, let me just block that off. Plus 40, and then we want to times 40 by how many times we can go downwards. So we're going to go current value of y, close that, and then we'll run that. So 41. Okay, so we have a problem. We have an extra line. So what we're going to do there is just quickly -1 off the end of that. Let me just give it some of that. Hopefully that'll fix it. There we go. So you see we're at 1, 1, and if we go across the top line, we are in line with the x-axis. So we should be at 40, 40. And if we go down, we have 80, 120, 160, and so on, so on, and so on, and so on. So that means we have 920 grid references in this grid. 920. See that? So wherever we go, we know we're at square 337, which is at axis x-axis 17, y-axis 9, which is tile ID 337. And that's important. That's how we are going to build our editor based off these numbers here. Okay, so we've got a little bit of an issue we've just seen there as I've dragged down, is the axis is, these numbers are still adding based on this here, you see, which we don't want. We don't want this to be able to go over the interface. So what we quickly do is always and insert, and we go mouse is over an object. Mouse is check for mouse over an object. Here we go. This, which is our UI background. Okay, so at the moment we're saying always and the mouse is over it, but we don't want to do that, so we're going to negate that. There we go. So always mouse isn't over this, do this. So now we should get all what we want, and as soon as we go over that, and we go, no more, except for here. But that's another thing, we can fix that. There we go. Problem solved. Problem solved. So we go back to here, give that a little save, make this a bit bigger, I suppose. That should fix that. There we go. Right. Okay, now that we have all our beautiful counters here, giving us all the information we need, we've got our delicious UI here at the bottom, and we have our cursor being snapped to this grid, we can actually make it do something. I know you're all sitting there going, but it doesn't do anything, Windybeard. Well, it's about to, so bear with me. First thing we need to do is create a tile set. All right, so these can be whatever you want them to be, but what we're going to do is something nice and simple. and we're going to set them to 16 by 16, which is the size of our editor. I'm going to clear that because we don't want none of that business. And we are going to start off with a nice little bit of mud. Oh yes, some mud. And put a little bit of grass at the top. Have some of that. There it is. And we'll put a little bit of shade here just underneath, just because we have an ounce of self-respect. So there it is. We have our tile, and it's beautiful. And then we're going to do another one, and what we're going to make this one do is look a bit like sand. Let's do that, because that's always fun. There we go. We have our sand. There we go. Some sand. And let's do one more. Let's do an alien landscape. Alien. There we are. So we've got 3 tiles. Right, 1, 2, 3. I'm also going to create one more. All right. But this one's going to be empty. It's not going to have anything in it apart from some of this business. We're just going to make it like that. And you'll see why in a bit, but just trust me on that one. So we've got our 3 tiles. We need to make sure the hotspot's at the bottom left. It can be anywhere you want, but we're going to go bottom left just because it's easier to control that way. There it is. And what we also need to do is make sure it's not animated. So set its animation speed. It's at 50 at the moment. We want it at 0. There we go. So we've got our tile set. We're going to call this, we'll call this tile set. Tile set. All right, there we go. Beautiful. And we're going to pop that there. Okay, and what this object is it's going to be the selection object. So it's not going to be the object that we are dropping. This is the object that will show us all the tiles we have at our disposal, allow us to click on it, and then draw with it. So this will show us everything we have. All the tiles that we can use will be displayed here in nice, neat rows. And you'll be able to see everything you have, basically. It makes things a lot easier and a lot quicker to actually make your levels. So there we have that. We need to give this a few values, which we'll need for the process of building our little list thing at the bottom. So the first one we're going to give it, and the most important, is ID. It needs to have an ID so that when we click on it, we know which one we clicked on. There's other ways of doing it, but we're going to do it nice and simple with an ID. And we also... No, that's all we need. Forget that. Don't need that one. Goodbye. Okay, so we have our ID. What we also need is one more active, all right? And this active is going to act as like a controller for the list. So again, we're going to make this 16 by 16. There it is. Get rid of all this business because we don't want that. And we're going to make it, let's do it red. And this is just behind the scenes sort of stuff. You won't actually see this in the game, but we'll give it a little arrow because this object is going to print the list for us. So it's a little arrow so we know what it is. And again, we want to set its hotspot bottom left. There we go. So there it is. We're going to call this object, we're going to call this selection dropper. All right. And this is what I do in all my editors. There's many ways of making these, but this is just how I do it and how I've always done it, and it works for me. So here we go. But we need to give this a few things as well. So we're going to give this ID, and we're also going to give it xlock. And xlock we're going to use just to know when the rows end, so we know when to start another row underneath. Okay. So we have our objects that we need. Selection dropper. There it is. And we don't actually need that on there. We just need that there. It will control this on its own. We also don't want it to be destroyed, so we click on that. We don't want it to be destroyed because it's off the frame. So if we give it a run, we've got nothing. We've still got our grid numbers, hooray, but we have this sitting here, which isn't doing anything. So let's make it do something. And we're going to make it do something by using fast loops, which are extremely important in Fusion. And once you understand what they are and how they work, they're very, very simple. So what a loop is, and I'm just going to explain this as best I can, as quickly as I can, is Fusion reads from top to bottom. So if you had 100 lines of stuff, it's going to read top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom, as quick as it can, hundreds of times a second. I don't even know how many times, but it's a lot. But what a fast loop does is it will tell it to break that top to bottom and read the loop as many times as it's told to read it. So what we're going to do is start a loop here, start loop, and we're going to call this tile set dropper. All right, that's what we're going to call it. Okay, tile set dropper. I'm going to copy that because we're going to need that again in a sec. So that's the name of our loop. And how many tiles do we think we're going to have in the game? Let's go with 15. All right, so we're going to have 15 tiles, 3 rows of 5. Yeah, 15 will do. Yeah. There we go, 3 rows of 5 tiles. So we're going to start that loop 15 times at the very start of the frame. So as soon as this frame starts, it's going to run this. But it's not being told to do anything in that loop, so nothing will happen. Look, nothing's happening. What's all that about? So we need to tell it to do something. So we'll add a quick comment here, and we'll call this tile set dropper. There we go. So we put a little note in so we know this is where the tile sets are being dropped here. And then we'll go to, now we need to start the loop. No, we don't. Ignore that. We started the loop there. Now we need to actually run the loop. So on loop, and we know the name. There it is, tile set dropper. We're going to do the following things. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this object. We're going to create one of these at that object's position. All right. We're going to tell it its ID based on what loop number it is. So the index of the loop, and then we're going to move it along, and then we're going to do the next tile, then the next tile, then the next tile, and so on and so on and so on. So we've told it to run the loop 15 times, and so it's going to run this 15 times, so it will print out our tile set for us. So loop's been started. On loop, we do the following. We're going to create an object. We're going to create tile set. I'm going to create it relative to this. All right. So it's creating one of these on every loop. So 15 times it's creating one of these, this object, at that, which is no good to us still, but we now have 15 tiles, but all on top of each other. So what we need to do is create it. Then we need to set this position, set its X coordinate. We need to move it along position, set X coordinate. So we're going to set its X coordinate to its own X coordinate plus 16 because the tiles are 16 pixels. So now what's going to happen is it's going to create this, then it's going to move itself across 16 pixels. So we should now have a long line of tiles. So let's run that and see what happens. Pow, there we go. There's all our tiles, 15 of them in a row, which isn't what we want, but it's starting to look good. So we're getting somewhere. So now what we do next is we need to tell it its X lock, so its X position. So every time it does that, we're going to add 1 to X lock. There it is. So we know now how far along that row this object is. So when it's on loop 7, for example, this will know, we will hold the number that is X locks at 7. Again, there's loads of other ways to do this. This is just how I do it. So there we go. We're creating, we're moving it along. Everyone's happy. But what we want to do is also pass this thing an ID, because at the moment it doesn't hold any information. So we're also going to set, we're going to add multiple values, add 1 to ID of this object. So it'll move in line with its X lock. There it is. And then we want to set its ID to the ID of this. So every time it creates one, it will tell its ID based on this ID. And then it will run the loop again, move along, create the next one, and then its ID will say 2, so it will tell this that its ID is 2, and so on, and so on, and so on. 15 times. So if we run it again, it still looks exactly the same. Nothing's changed, apart from these things now have more information. And because these things have an ID, we can set their animation frame, so we can see the different frames. So we go to animation, change animation frame, and it's holding its ID now. So we have an ID, set it to animation ID. There we go. So it should look like this. Create an object, set its position to position plus 16, so on, and all this. All right. So if we run it now, we get some of this business. But again, it's not working. Why? Why, I hear you scream. That's because frames, animation frames, need to have a -1. Could be a +1. Let's try it. Okay, there it goes. I don't know why I'm getting this invisible one here. Yes, I do. Last thing it needs to do is that. How strange. What is this? Let's have a look. Oh, that's why. I hadn't set the hotspots in the right place. Panic over. It's all working. It's all working. Don't panic. There we go. Run. Beautiful. So there we go. 1, 2, 3. And our little squares, empty ones. All right. So that's working. Everyone's happy. So what we need to do now is to do the following, which we can do if we want. You don't need to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this up. So it's not just one line of tiles. Okay. We're going to make it 2 rows of tiles. We'll make it 2 rows. Okay. So in order to do that, we need to run it 30 times. Let's run it 30 times and you can see what happens. Look. Even longer. So now we've got 30 tiles. But it's stretching all the way across now. We don't really want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell it that on this loop, all right, and this value, multiple value, xlock is greater or equal to 15, which we know is half. We're going to set its position. We're going to move it down 16 pixels. So we're going to set it to its own y position plus 16. All right. We're going to set its position, its x coordinate to, again, its own position, x coordinate, but we need to move it back 15 pixels. So we're going to go 16. We're going to minus 16 times 15, because it was 15 loops, 16 pixels, and that should move us back. And we need to remember to set this to 0, because this triggers whether or not we go down a line. So let's give that a run. Here we go. What do we got? There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. Now we've got 2 rows. 2 rows of 15. Perfection. And then give that a little save. Okay, so another cool thing you can do with loops is this object here, which we can see hanging around here at the bottom. We don't want that hanging about. No, we don't want it. So we're going to destroy it. But where do we destroy it? Do we destroy it down here? No, we don't. What we're going to do is destroy it at the start of the frame. We're going to destroy that. And the reason we do that is because the frame starts, it runs the loop, which does the loop before it will do anything else. Then it will destroy this. So it will run that loop 30 times, then destroy it. And it's redundant after this 30 loops have been run. So let's give that a little spin. Bang, there we go. It's gone. We don't need it anymore. And these should have little IDs in them. And we're all ready to go. Okay. So now we have our little tile set ready to rock. So we can use this in a sec to then paint up here with these different blocks however we see fit. And that's what we're going to do next. Right, so we have our list. Beautiful. That's all working nice. But we need to be able to select these now. Give these. You need to be able to select them and then have that change an icon so you know what you're printing. So let's do that. And in order to do that, we're going to clone our tile set object. Here it is. We're going to clone it. And we're going to call this tile dropped. All right, tile dropper. No, tile dropped is a good idea. We'll go with tile dropped. So it looks exactly the same. Pretty much is. We don't need that. Get rid of that. You'll understand what I'm doing in a minute. Right. Okay. I just move the hotspot up to the top left for these, and so that's in line with our cursor. So what we want to do is we want to make this thing hang around this. All right, we're going to make it hang around this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create another empty frame. So this one's invisible, all right? So we have nothing, then these 3 frames, which are our tiles, all right? Now we do want to save that, thank you. So now it's invisible, can't see it, but it's there. We know it's there. So it's the same tiles, just a slightly different layout. We have an invisible one at start. So what we want to do, all right, is we want to go back to our mouse pointer, blah, 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 always event here. And we're going to set this tile dropped. We want to set its position always at the cursor. Always relative to the cursor if we can click on it. Come on. Come on. All right, we'll do it this way. Always relative to that. Okay, so you can't see it, but that thing we just created, this is always linked to the mouse. And I can show you that by just changing this to this. There we go. So now you should see we always have that. There we go. All right. So we can always see our tile. So let's put that back. There we go. So we have our object there, and that's ready for us to paint our level or whatever we're going to do. So we'll stick in a new line here, insert new comment, and we'll put here tile dropping. All right, there we go, tile dropping. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to link the object we just created to the one that we select. So from this list here, we want to be able to click on that and then this appear and show us the tile that we've selected. That's what we want. So in order to do that, we're going to go on here, we're going to go mouse, user clicks on an object, user clicks on an object here. The user's going to click the left button and they're going to click on the tile set. All right, so they've clicked on the tile set, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set the new thing that we created. We're going to set its animation frame, change animation frame to the animation frame of this one. All right, current frame. Let's give that a little click. And it's probably not going to work because we have an empty tile, but you can see they're changing just out of sync. So that's easy enough to change. We just need to slap in a +1, I think. Is it plus or minus? We'll find out. Yeah, there we go. So now when we click on our tile, it changes the one in our level editor. Everyone's happy. Yeah, look at that. Mud, sand, earth, or alien or whatever. So that's happening. And we also need to tell this thing, where is it? Tile dropper. We need to tell this thing an ID, which we already got because we copied this one. So we've got our ID. So we need to pass that information over as well. So what we're going to do now is set this ID to the ID of the one we clicked, which is this one. Values ID. Happy days. And what we're going to do, just to make things a little bit easier, all right, we're going to clone this. We're just going to grab another counter, right? This is a counter here, and we're going to just call this one tile selected. Okay. And what this will do is it will just tell us the ID of the tile that we've clicked on, just so we can have a visual, and we'll probably use it as well. You can use the inside numbers, but it's easier to reference something you can see. Makes things a bit easier. And that's one thing I like to do when I make editors or games, is make things as easy as possible for me, because you know that's the way you do things, isn't it? That's the best way of doing it. So what we're going to do is go back to when the user clicks on this. We're going to get the tile selected, and we're going to set the counter, and we're going to set it to the ID of the tile that we click. Simple as that. There we go. So now when we click on this, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, see, and it knows what tile we've clicked on. And this number is going to be very important for when we save the information. So when we want to save the level, because it's all well and good making a level, but you're going to want to save and load that level. So you need these numbers. These numbers become extremely important. So there we go. We've got our tile set. We've got our selector. Now what do? I hear you scream. We need to paint the level. We need to be able to print the level. So we're going to go, once we've clicked on this, boom, boom, we need to do the following. So when the player clicks on the level, so we go mouse, and we'll do repeat while. Okay, so repeat while mouse key is pressed. So you don't have to press for every square, because that will get on your nerves. So left button is pressed. So repeat while the left mouse key is pressed. And again, we want to use this so it isn't over the interface. Let's just chuck that in there. We'll copy it. We're going to simply animation, paste image into background, and we're going to go not an obstacle. So that's it. So that should now do this. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. We are in business, ladies and gentlemen. We are in business. Look at that. We're nearly there. Simple as that. Simple as that. What we're going to do real quick, just because I can't help myself. We're going to chuck in another tile just in here, and we're going to make this one all mud. Oh no, we're not. We're going to make this one all mud so that we can actually build land. Yeah, land masses. And that's just a visual thing, but we're going to do it anyway, just for the sake of it. And we're going to chuck that in there. So now we should have another tile. That's how quickly we can add to this. See, look, another tile, there it is. So we've got another tile now. That's how quickly you can add to this editor new tiles and stuff. So you see what I mean? So now we have all this going on. So you can build actual floors and whatever else you want to do. There you go, see? And that's how quick that is to build levels. So once you've got this all set up, it's not that hard. You end up with a really good level editor. So I'll give that a quick save. So we've got that, but that information is useless. What we're painting here doesn't hold any information at the moment. So this is where we need to start using this bad boy, the level data array. All right, and I'll quickly explain what an array is as best as I can. All right. And basically this is just a way of storing information, and it's a very good way of storing information. I use it in every game I make, and the best way for me to explain is this, and here's one I made earlier. We've got what I think in my head when I'm working with an array. This is what goes through my mind, right? So if you think of it like a grid of information, which is exactly what it is, you have these reference points on the grid, okay? And what we're going to use is this line here, okay? And we're going to use this line using this number. See this number here, 882? All of those numbers. So that's how we're going to remember where the tiles are placed, using this single number at the bottom here, all right? And there's, again, many ways of doing it, but this is how I do it. So if we close that down, so what we're going to have is, so this tile here, and this tile here would be the same as me doing this, and this. Yeah, 1, 1, 1, like that. Okay, and then you can take things even further because we're placing ID information, because we know this information here. So what we're actually doing here is we're writing the number 1. Let's get rid of that. Number 1, number 1, number 1. So what 1, 1, 2 would look like in here, in the game, would be if we had that. That's what that is, 1, 1, 2. And then if we had 3, 1, 2, that would look like this, using the third tile. So 3, 1, 2. And that's how we're going to build our levels. Okay, so this number here, 584, for example, would be where it's got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah, 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 all the way up to hundreds and hundreds, whatever you want. It's going to be down here, but this one line is going to be all the information for our level, and we'll use that line there. So knowing that, we're going to do the following. All right, so repeat while mouse key is pressed. All right, and blah, blah, blah. When we print that thing, we want to set, and we want to write some information to this file. Okay, we're going to write the following. We're going to write a value to X and Y, this one here. And what we're going to write, so it's asking us what value do we want to write to that grid reference. So we know that we want to write the number of the tile, the ID of the tile that we're printing. And we have that right here, tile selected. So we're going to grab that. That's the information we want to save. And then it's going to ask us where we want to save it. So we want to save it at an X index. But we know what that X index is because we have our location ID. There it is. That's what we want to use. So location ID goes in as our X. And then it's going to ask us for a Y. And what I'm going to explain here is, for example, if you had different things in your game. So we're going to make this editor so it is expandable. You can do what you want with it. So the Y is this one. So we're going to use, actually, ignore those numbers there. That would actually be up here. 3, 1, 2, because we've got Y1 there. So that was naughty of me. Ignore that. And then if you wanted to, say, have trees, for example, that are slightly in the background, you could save those here in this reference in Y2. And then Y3, you could save enemies, Y4, Y5, whatever. However many hundreds and wonderful things you want in your game, you can save them all in the array, and then you can use them in your game however the hell you want. But that's how we're doing it. So, but we want to use 1. So this is our tiles, just tiles. All right, so we'll just write that there, just so we know. Tiles, I'm doing this with a mouse, it's awful. But that's our tiles is at Y1, right? So we know that. So we're going to set that to Y1. Bang. Okay, So that should be doing that now. Every time we place a tile, it will be placing it into the save file as well. Simple as that. So let's check that out. We've got our debugger here. So let's chuck in a 1. Let's just go with here. All right. So what we've done, ID 1 at X128, as you can see bottom left, and we know it's Y1. So let's see if that actually worked. So we're going to go have a look in here, other objects. There's our level data array there. So we're going to check it 128. So here we go. So we said 128 Y1. There it is. We know it's there because it's given us a 1. So if we was to chuck a 3 at 131, we can check that. 131. There we go. 3. So now we have that. So if we set that to 130, nothing. There's nothing there. There's no tiles there. But again, if we go to 128, there's 1 because we have this. And so on and so on and so on. So as we're doing this, it's saving all the information of where we place these tiles. So if we check 708, let's have a look. 708, tile 3, which is what we printed. So all of these have been recorded in that data file, ready for us to save. Okay, so that is working. Hooray. What we need to do now is save it. Okay, so what we'll do is quickly add a button. Chuck that there. And we'll call that, we'll put save on there. All right, we'll give it a quick name. So we'll call it BTN save. All right. So now we need to make it so when you click that button, it will save the game or save the data file. So we'll stick it in here. Where's my button? There it is, save. Button clicked. What are we going to do? We're going to save this file. Save array to file via a file selector. There we go. Bang. So now when we run it, that should bring up a file selector. Let us save that file. So let's try that out. Here we go. Hit save. We'll draw something in first. We'll put the word hi. There we go. Have some of that. And then we'll put some grass underneath. Like that. And then just fill in some mud. Whatever. We won't do the whole lot. Yeah, we will. Why not? There we go. Give that a little paint like that. There we go. So hit save. There we go. Bang. Save. What we're going to save this file as, let's just call it test for now. There we go. Hit save. So we've saved that. If we just press it again, we can see there it is. Look. There's my file. There's my data file. 36 kilobytes. Very, very small. But that's what I just saved. And that should hold this information here. All right. So that is all well and good. But we need to bring this back into the game. We need to be able to load this information. So we're saving it, we're creating it and saving it, but then what do we do with it? We need to be able to load it. And that is the next thing we are going to do. So what we'll do here is put a new comment in. Let's put load level. All right. Boom. Load level. And now we're going to load that information back into the game so that we can obviously make use of the levels that we make. So in order for us to load the information, we need to add another button. Let's just pop that there. We'll put save there, and we need to create another button. So let's get a new button going on. There we go. And we're gonna call this. We're gonna put load on there, like that. We're gonna give it a name, BTN load. There it is. So that's our load button. So first things first, we need to chuck in a quick line. Where is it? There it is. Button is clicked. So when you click on this button, what's going to happen? I hear you scream. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to load this file load array from file selector. So we're going to hit that. So now when we hit load, boom, you can then select your file, bang, it's loaded. All right, and we can't really see anything because we haven't told it to do anything with the information when it loads it. All we've done is load the information. So let's do something with it. Let's do something with it. Get on with it, I hear you scream. All right, calm down. Calm down. Right, so here we go. So we've loaded it. And then once we've loaded it, we need to start a fast loop. And this is where, when I said earlier that the printing of this business down here is pretty much the same as what we're going to do up here. And you'll notice a lot of similarities right now. So we're going to start a fast loop, start loop, and we're going to call this one load level, and that's what we're going to call it. All right, load level. But how many times are we going to run this loop? I don't know. So we can easily find out, because we're going to run it this many times, 920 times. Okay, so we're going to run that loop 920 times, because that's how many tiles we can have on that level. So we're running it 920. But again, nothing happens, because we're not telling it to do anything in that loop. We're just running the loop. And that loop will run super, super fast. So don't panic about the number of 920. It's not that high at all. So let's do something with it. So again, like we created this weird little object here, we're going to create another one. Let's clone it. And we're going to pop it up here, top left. And we're going to rename this. We're going to call this, let's call it level loader. All right, let's call it that. And we still have the ID and the X-lock because we cloned this one. We need both of those. So we'll leave that the same. But what we will do is we'll change its color just so we can see the difference between them. We'll make this one blue. So our level loader is blue. There it is. So what we need to do again is move it across on every loop like we did. But we also need to check the save file if there is a tile at that location. All right, that's what it does. And if there is, put that tile down, then move on to the next spot. Check if there's a tile, place it. If not, move on, move on, move on, and so on and so on and so on, 960 times, and just repeat what we told it is in the save file. Just print it back out. That's what we're doing. Simple as that. All right. So we're going to run that loop, and let's go on loop. Did I copy and paste it? Yes, I did. Load level. There it is. So 920 times it's run, and then on that loop we're going to do the following. Okay. So we've got our loader. Here it is. So what we need to do, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but not too much. If you remember what we did with our data file here, we just need to check the data file at the location. All right, so here we go. On loop, we're going to set ID, and what this ID is going to be the ID inside the data file. So if it's a 0, it means there's no tile. If it's a 1, we know it's the grass tile. If it's 2, we know it's sand. If it's 3, we know it's alien. And if it's 4, we know it's just mud. So we need to set that ID to, and we need to read the data file. So read a value from X and Y. Remember when we placed it in the X and Y. And right, here we go for this X offset. So the X number, we need to know what part of the loop we're on. So we go to fast loops in here and then get the loop index. And the loop index is the number of the loop. So if you have 100 loops, every time it loops through the information is 1 to the index. So if you're on the 10th of 100th loop, you'll be on index 10. So we're going to get the loop index of that loop, which is called load level. There it is, because we know that. And then we're going to plus 1. And we plus 1 because loops start with a 0 and our data file starts at 1. So we just put a plus 1. Just trust me on that one. And the Y offset we know is 1 because the information has been held at 1, as we did here. Tiles Y1. And that's our tiles all the way across to 920. So there we go. So now it should be telling it the ID of what's in that location on the data file. And then we need to do that. So that's it. That's all we do. And then on this load level again, we're going to do the following. Load level, and if the value of the ID is greater than 0. So if it's 0, no tile. If it's greater than 0, there is a tile. All right. So then we know if there's a tile, we need to print a tile. So what we do is create an object. No, we don't create an object. We go back. We go back, ladies and gentlemen. So we don't create an object. We don't actually create an object because we have our tile object here, don't we? You know, the one that's following the mouse about. We're going to use that. So what we're going to do, if it's greater than 0, all right, we're going to grab this object, which is here. Give me the name. Yeah, well, anyway, we're going to set its position to this. Bear with me. We need to set that to the top left, I believe. Is it the same as this? Nope, not that one. This one. Yep. Okay, so we need to set... Go up. Oh, come on. There we go. We're going to set its position to that. We're going to animation... We're going to set its frame, change its animation frame to the ID, so it knows what tile it is. Okay. So it's setting it to position. We're forcing its animation to that, and then we're going to paste it into the background, just like we did when we dropped it with a mouse. However, this time it's going to do it on its own. So paste the image into background, not an obstacle. So there we go. And then we're also going to then go position. Set its X coordinate to values. No, forget that. Position, set X coordinate plus 16, because we need to move it along one. But we also need to add one, if you remember, to the X lock. Not set. Add one to X lock. So we know it's moved across one. So what it's going to do is it's going to set this to the same position as that. It's then going to force its animation to the ID that we've got from the data file. It's then going to paste it into the background, so it's going to stamp it with the frame that we've picked based on its ID. It's then going to move across 16 pixels, and then we're going to add one to its X lock. All right. So what we're going to quickly do is add another one and make if it is equals 0. There's loads of ways of doing this. This is just the way I'm doing it. So if it is 0, we don't want to create it. We don't want to force its animation, nor do we want to paste it into background. We just do this. That's all we're doing. So if there is a tile there, print it. If there isn't, just move on. All right. Nice and simple. So that should be that. But that's not actually going to help us, because we still need to move it down if it reaches the end. So it'll move all the way across to the right. Once it gets to the right, we need to bring it back, move it down one, and print it all the way across, left to right, 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 like an old school printer, you know. So on loop again, its value of the X lock is greater or equal to 40, because we know 40 is as far right as you can go. That's the furthest X location you can get. So once it's greater or equal to 40, we need to position, set X coordinate to 0, which is the left hand side of the screen. We need to set its position again, its Y coordinate, to itself plus 16, same as above, because we're using 16 tiles, 16 pixel tiles. And we also set this back to 0. If we forget to do that, things will go all funny. So there we go. That should now print out our level with, hopefully, let's give it a run. Fingers crossed. Are we ready? Let's try. Let's see what happens. Boom. It's loaded our level editor. There we go. It's loaded our level. Exactly as we printed it. Exactly as we drew it. So now, for example, if I was to put some sand here, just a little box of sand like that. Let's just put that there. Save it. Just rewrite it. Quickly run it again. Load it. And we've got our sand. There it is. Simple level editor. And you can do lots of things with this. You can take it a lot further than this. Like I said, you could have tabs here that will print different lists depending on what you click on. So these are just our floor tiles. But if you wanted trees, you could set dynamic sizes. So you could, type in how many wide you want to go. So instead of 40 wide, you could tell it 60 or 100 or whatever you want, and you can have different size maps. You can have different heights. You can do whatever you want, and it all works based off of the information that you've seen here today. It's so simple to do. It may seem complicated if some of the concepts like the array and fast loops are new to you, but just try and get your head around how they work. And a level editor is both extremely useful and fairly simple to do. And I do hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please chuck them in the comments. Message me on my Discord or on Twitch, where I stream every single day, or on Twitter or whatever. Just get in contact with me and I'll be happy to help. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you've learned something here today. Level editors is something I enjoy making. They're just as fun to make as games sometimes, but don't fall into the trap of spending too much time on it. It's a tool. But yeah, there you go. Enjoy. And if you would like the MFA of this editor to be able to run, pick apart, modify, do whatever you want, it is you can get it on my Patreon for just $1 a month, and you can get access to this and my drawings and some other stuff. So check me out on there. And thanks for watching.